Kings.
I heard it.
So we were reading last time that Elijah gave up the throne to Elisha. Elisha followed him. We go chapter 20. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, gathered all his army and 32 kings with him and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and waged war with it. And he sent messengers to Ahab, the king of Israel, to the city. And he said to him, Thus said Ben-Hadad, Your silver and gold are mine. Your beautiful wives and children are mine. And the king of Israel answered him and said, As you say, my master, the king, I am yours as well, as all that is mine. And the messengers returned and said, Thus said Ben-Hadad, As I have sent to you, saying, Your silver and your gold, your wives and your children you shall give to me. But at this time tomorrow I will send my servants to you, and they will search your house and the house of your servants. And anything you prize they will put in their hands and take it away. And the king of Israel summoned all the elders of the land and said, Please realize and see that this man is looking to cause harm. For he has sent to me for my wives, my sons, my silver and gold. And I have not denied him. And all the elders and all the people said to him, Do not obey and do not consent. And he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, Tell to your master the king, all that you have sent to your servant at first, I will do. But this matter I cannot do. And the messengers went, and they brought back the message to him. And Ben-Hadad sent to him and said, So shall the gods do to me, and so shall they continue, if the earth of Samaria suffice for the footsteps of all the people who are with me. And the king of Israel answered and said, Say, one who girds the sword shall not boast as one who ungirds the sword. And it was he, as he heard these words, as he was drinking, he and the kings who were with him in pavilions, that he said to his servants, Lay on, and they laid siege to the city. And behold, a certain prophet approached Ahab, the king of Israel, and said, So said the Lord, Have you seen all this great multitude? Behold, I am giving them into your hands today, and you will know that I am the Lord. And Ahab said, With whom? And he said, Thus said the Lord, with the use of the governors of the provinces. And he said, Who will commandeer the battle? And he said, You. And he counted the use of the governors of the provinces, and they were 232. And afterwards he counted all the people, and all the children of Israel, 7,000. And they went out at noon, and Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilions, he and the kings, the 32 kings who aided him. And the use of the governors of the provinces went out first, and Ben-Hadad sent out, and they told him, saying, Men have come out of Samaria. And he said, If for peace they have come out, seize them alive. If for war they have come out alive, shall you seize them. A God of mountains is their God, therefore you overpowered us. However, if we fight them in the plains, you will see, if we will not overpower them. And do this thing, remove the kings each man from his place, and place officers in their place. And you shall number for yourself an army, like the army that fell from you. And horse for horse, and chariot for chariot, and we will fight against them in the plains. And you will see if we will not overpower them. And he heeded them, and he did so. And as it was at the return of the year, that Ben-Hadad counted the Arameans, and he went up to Aphek to war with the children of Israel. And the children of Israel were counted and provisioned, and they went to meet him. And the children of Israel encamped against like 2 flocks of goats, whereas the Arameans filled the land. And the man of God approached and said to the king of Israel, and he said, Thus said the Lord, Because the Arameans said that God on the mountains is the Lord, and he's not God over the valleys, I will deliver all this great multitude into your hand, and you will know that I am the Lord. And they were encamped opposite each other for 7 days. And it was on the 7th day that the men of battle drew closer, and the children of Israel killed of Aram 100,000 footmen in one day. And the survivors fled to Aphek, to the city, and the wall fell on the 27,000 men who'd survived. And Ben-Hadad fled and came into the city of the chamber within the chamber. And a servant said to him, Behold, we have now heard that the kings of the house of Israel are kindly kings. Let us put sackcloth on our loins and ropes on our heads, and let us go out to the king of Israel. Perhaps he will spare your life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and ropes on their heads, and they came to the king of Israel, and he said, Your servant Ben-Hadad said, Please may my life be spared. And he said, Is he still alive? He is my brother. And the people took it for an omen, and they hastened and caught it from him, and said, Your brother Ben-Hadad? And he said, Come and take him. Ben-Hadad went out to him and helped him climb up into the chariot. And he said to him, The cities which my father took from your father I will return, and you shall make streets for yourself in Damascus, as my father had made in Samaria. And I will, said Ahab, release him with his treaty. And he forged with him a treaty, and he released him. And certain men of the disciples of the prophet said to his friend, By the word of the Lord strike me now. And the man refused to hit him. And he said to him, Because you have not obeyed the Lord, you will depart from me, and a lion will strike you. And he went away from him, and a lion found him and struck him. And he found another man, and he said, Strike me, please. And the man struck him, striking and wounding him. And the prophet went and waited for the king on the way. And he disguised himself with his headband over his eyes. And it was when the king was passing that he cried out to the king. And he said, Your servant went out in the thick of the battle, and behold, the man turned aside. And he brought to me a man and said, Watch this man for me. If he will be missing, your life will be instead of his life. Or else you shall weigh out a talent of silver. And your servant was busy here and there, and he was gone. And the king of Israel said to him, so is your verdict, you have pronounced it. And he hastened and removed his headband from his eyes, and the king of Israel recognized him that he was one of the prophets. And he, the prophet, said to him, thus saith the Lord, because you have released the man whom I designated for destruction from your hand, it will be your life instead of his life, and your people instead of his people. And the king of Israel went to his home sad, and he came to Samaria, upset. Now the commentary by Rabbi Greenbaum. The wars of Aram against Israel narrated in our present chapter are not the war that God foretold to Elijah, which came a generation later. Nevertheless, ever since the end of King Solomon's reign, the Arameans had been organizing to throw off the yoke of subjugation that King David had laid upon them. The endemic and Aramean envy and hatred of Israel dated back to Lavan and Bilam, who epitomized the use of crafty intelligence and wisdom to hide godliness. Behind the account of their war against Israel, as told in the chapter, lie allusions to the way in which the Klippa, the husk of Aram, corresponding to the vernacular language, Aramaic and mundane intelligence, seeks to hijack the holy wisdom of the Torah for its own purpose. Thus Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, came against Israel with 32 kings, corresponding to the 32 pathways of wisdom rooted in the 22 letters and 10 vowels of Hebrew. The rabbinic interpretation of Ben-Hadad's provocative ultimatum to King Ahab is that he did not only want Ahab's silver and gold and wives and children, but all the mamad, the light of your eyes. This is an allusion to the Torah, whose teachings are more delightful, nehamdim, than pure gold. Ben-Hadad wanted to have the Torah surrendered into his own hands in order to reinterpret and falsify it in the way he chose. The amazing thing is that Ahab, the Baal and Asherah worshipper, was perfectly willing to give up everything else, but balked at the idea of giving up the Torah to the point that he was ready to go to war rather than submit. Ahab called all the elders of Israel, who certainly included the 7,000 and were still faithful, and the entire nation agreed to flout Aram, which shows that they were far from being crude idolaters, who were in flight from their whole tradition. For what reason did Ahab merit to rule for 22 years? Because he gave honor to the Torah, which was given with 22 letters. Verse 9 contains 22 Hebrew letters. It was surely in the merit of the Israelite zeal burning in the king Ahab that a true prophet informed him that God would deliver the Arameans into his hands. The prophet told him that instead of sending out his entire army to fight them, the king should dispatch only the young men of the princes of the provinces. These are the children of the princes of Ahab's subject states, whom they were forced to send to his capital as collateral, to ensure that they would not rebel. The fact that they were of the 232.
But in the Gittin Chumash it says 29. Henry was telling me.
Which one?
That one right there.
The bunch.
Yeah, it's 29.
Take another look at it.
Let's take a look. Ben-Hadad fled, but he knew, as well as Israel's Arab adversaries know until today, that the Israelite heart is tender, merciful, and forgiving, and that he would only have to say a few soothing words to the king against whom he had unleashed 2 major wars in order to be able to enter into a peace process with him. God had maneuvered Ben-Hadad into his trap, but Ahab let the Aramean king get away, much as recent Israeli governments have almost never lost an opportunity to allow the country's enemies to get away with their endless aggressions and provocations. God's prophet told Ahab that his misplaced kind-heartedness would cost him his life and cause enormous national suffering. But Ahab did not want to listen and rushed off home in a furious temper.
In other words,
Chapter 20. Continues.